Most people are not tired because they work hard. They are tired because they are trying to prove something. Trying to prove they are valuable. Trying to prove they are good enough. Trying to prove they deserve respect. Trying to prove their life matter. But underneath all that striving is something deeper. It's called guilt. Not always obvious guilt, not always emotional guilt, but the internal awareness that something is not right. The human soul knows when it's out of alignment with God. And when guilt is not dealt with correctly, life becomes a performance-based system. Work becomes identity. Success becomes validation. Religion becomes payment. Image becomes protection. And productivity becomes survival. But the cross changes the entire operating system. The Christ does not make a person passive. The Christ makes a person stable. Because when guilt is dealt with, the person no longer has to perform for worth. They can finally live from restored function. Guilt is not just a feeling. Guilt is the legal and moral consequence of violating God's design and His laws. And the conscience bears witness to that reality. When a machine operates outside its design, stress enters the system. When a business violates structure, confusion enters operation. When a nation violates law, disorder enters society. The human being works the same way. Man was designed to live under the authority of the living God. God is the source, God is the standard, God is the foundation of our identity, morality, purpose, and function. But when man separates from God, guilt enters the conscience. The relationship is broken. The inner government of the person loses proper authority, and the soul begins to operate from survival. This is the base human operating system without restoration. Protect yourself, promote yourself, justify yourself, glorify yourself, save yourself. That is why people are restless. They are not just working, they are striving. They're not just achieving, they are proving. They're not just correcting mistakes, they are defending their image. They're not just trying to do well, they are trying to become secure through performance. This is where the malfunction begins. Because unresolved guilt always looks for a covering. Some people cover it with money, some people with status, some with success, some with attention, some with moral superiority, some with religious activity, but none of these can remove guilt. They can only hide it for a while. The human being was never designed to live from survival and self-glory. Survival takes over when trust in God is broken. Self-glory takes over when worship is disordered. When a person is not secure in God, they begin using the world as a mirror. They need people to tell them who they are. They need achievement to prove they are valuable. They need comparison to feel superior. They need control to feel safe. But this system can never produce peace, because the world is unstable. Jobs change, money changes, approval changes, status changes. People praise you one day and forget you the next. So the person keeps striving, always checking, always comparing, always trying to build a life strong enough to cover the guilt inside. This is why rejecting Christ damages human psychology. Without the Christ, guilt has no lawful solution. The person is left with self-salvation, and self-salvation produces two main states: pride when you think you're doing well, fear when you know you're not. Pride says, look what I have done. Fear says, what if I'm exposed? Pride says, I am better than them. Fear says, I am not enough. But both come from the same broken system. The soul is trying to create peace without reconciliation with God. That cannot work. A broken relationship with God cannot be repaired by human achievement. It requires restoration from God. That is where Christ becomes central mechanism. Christ is not just a religious leader. Christ is God's legal and relational solution to the human condition. At the cross, Jesus deals with sin, guilt, judgment, separation, and the broken relationship between man and God. He carries what the human soul was never designed to carry. He answers what human performance could never answer. This matters because guilt is not removed by ignoring it. Guilt is removed when the violation is properly dealt with. At the cross, justice is not ignored, mercy is not weak, the debt is dealt with. The way back to the Father is open. The relationship can be restored. And when the relationship with God is restored, the psychology of the person begins to change. The person no longer has to fight the war to prove themselves. They no longer have to use work as identity. They no longer have to use success as salvation. They no longer have to use religion as payment. They no longer have to use pride as protection. Their foundation becomes grace. Grace means the person is not restored because they perform perfectly. They are restored because God provided the way through Christ. But grace does not remove responsibility. Grace removes condemnation. That distinction is critical. Christ does not say, now you have nothing to do. Christ says, now you can finally do what you were created to do from the right foundation. Before Christ, work is often self-protection. After the Christ, work becomes service. Before Christ, productivity is survival. After Christ, productivity becomes stewardship. Before Christ, obedience is payment. After Christ, obedience is alignment. This is how the Christ makes you productive and at peace. Peace comes first, then productivity becomes clean. A person who has peace with God is no longer wasting energy on proving, hiding, defending, and comparing. Their conscience can become clear. Their identity can become stable. Their purpose can become ordered. Their work becomes service. Their discipline can become maintenance. Their relationship can become humility instead of competition. This is functional life. The person no longer needs their job to tell them who they are. They no longer need applause to continue. They no longer need superiority to feel secure. They no longer need failure to destroy them. They can simply serve. They can work with excellence. They can correct mistakes. They can take responsibility. They can treat people properly. They can become useful. This is the psychology of restoration. The cross brings the person back into relationship with the Father. And once that relationship is restored, the person no longer lives as a survival machine. They live as a son, servant, steward, and representative. This produces peace, and from that peace comes real productivity. Not productivity driven by fear, not productivity driven by ego, not productivity driven by guilt, but productivity driven by humility, service, responsibility, and love for God and your fellow beings. This is original function. Here's some principles to remember. Guilt is the internal signal that design has been violated. Unresolved guilt turns life into performance, comparison, and self-protection. The base human operating system without God is survival, self-glory, and self-justification. Self-salvation produces pride when you succeed and fear when you fail. The cross is God's solution for guilt, separation, a restored relationship. Grace removes condemnation, not responsibility. Peace with God creates the foundation for clean productivity. Restored people work from service, not self-glory. Here's some action steps. Identify where you're using work, success, image, or religion to prove your worth. Recognize guilt as a signal that the relationship with God needs restoration. Stop trying to repair your soul through achievement, comparison, or performance. Receive the sacrifice of Jesus as God's solution for guilt and restored relationships. Rebuild your identity from grace, not status, applause, or success. Turn your work into service to God and service to people. Practice humility by becoming useful instead of needing to be seen as a superior. Live productively from peace, not fear. Reflection. Where are you still using performance to prove that what only God can restore? If this video helped you to understand the original function of life a little deeper, make sure to like the video so more people can discover these principles, and subscribe to join the journey of returning to original function.